Astropsych 400, podcast for sleep. It's time to go to sleep now. Time to surround yourself with positive vibes. You are who you are. Being weird is not a crime. Some people think that they have a monopoly on strength. In fact, they think that half the population has a monopoly on this word strength. But life is not like that. Do not let people force you into false dichotomies. Do not let people make you think that there are only the strong and only the weak. Those are not the only two types of people out there, because strength comes in many different forms, and some people have an enormous amount of self-control, and other people might be physically strong, muscular, able to lift heavy objects, able to carry more than someone else, but they have no self-control. They have no ability to gauge their emotions, and they start punching a wall as soon as they don't get their way. That is not strong, though. They might have a certain muscular component to their stature, but they don't have strength of the mind. Strength can exist in many different forms, and sometimes it requires just the experience of life to gain a greater understanding of this. I've known several people who like to throw their weight around, for lack of a better term. They think that they are the most powerful person in the group because they are the strongest. But in 2018, I picked up a copy of the book Freedom by Adam Kokesh, and on one of the first pages there was a sentence that addressed this, and it said that in a civilized society, you do not get to be in charge just because you can pick up the biggest rock. And that has always stayed with me, that ideas are very valuable, thinking is very valuable, emotional control is very valuable, mental toughness might be the most valuable component of them all, because you'll notice that the people whom we elect into office, whether it's for the presidency or the prime minister, depending on your country, or perhaps for the House of Representatives or Parliament, they aren't always physically strong people. They're people who understand systems. They're people who understand analysis and using certain tactics to get into that position. And a lot of their abilities don't even come from ideas. That comes from persuasion, the ability to use words in a certain way. And that is its own form of strength. They have very strong persuasion tactics. And once you begin to understand that, the world becomes a little bit clearer, that strength can exist in so many different forms. And I'm sure that even if you've listened this far in, you're probably already thinking about a bodybuilder at the gym. When you first heard the word strength, you're probably just thinking about someone lifting dumbbells and flexing their muscles. But strength can also exist in the heart. The people who have an enormous amount of care for other people, the people who do not give up when things get difficult, and people who are simply standing by those whom they love during times of crisis and during times of need, and also they can understand the boundaries. However, when it comes to taking care of people, so many conflate strength of the heart with manipulation, and almost everyone has a self-serving agenda. But I used to say that a lot of people experience these sets of behaviors. Some people succeed and bring everybody with them, and some people never succeed at all because what they wanted was garbage in the first place. They use all of their mental energy to be mean or to manipulate or just to get someone to do their share of the work, to just so they don't have anything to do for themselves. They're sneaky, they're lazy, and they're indifferent to the well-being of other people. And how on earth could that type of behavior ever be portrayed as strong? Because if we're going to look at the different aspects of strength, shouldn't we also include the parts where someone is strong in their ability to work in social groups? And what about strong in their ability to work independently? And I'm sure no matter who you are, and I hope that you are well asleep now, but I'm sure that there is something strong about you. I cannot believe that a person is going to be completely weak, even if some people say that this person has a big heart, or they're very kind, or they're very generous. That should also be viewed as a form of strength. But there was a video that someone had shared with me recently, and it was discussing the book Zen and the Art of Archery. I read that book about 9 years ago, but I don't remember it too well. There's another more famous book out there called Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. But it was talking about how some of us focus on the result, and some of us focus on the process, and some of us focus on both. And it's good to focus on both of those things. This can be a component of mental strength. And I think about this so much when I was creating videos on YouTube, and I would look at the discombobulated recordings, listen to them rather, but of course you're watching on the YouTube screen, and I would listen to my ramblings and thinking about how it's so disorganized. The end of the episode should have been first. I didn't introduce the subject properly. I'm just talking all over the map. And I began to think, what on earth did I do? There are so many episodes that I've done on BlackBoxOnlineRadio, my other YouTube channel like that. And why? Why did that happen? Because I was only focusing on the process and not on the result. And you can do both. And you can also view life as a journey. This is another component from that video, again, discussing Zen and the Art of Archery, but talking about viewing life as a journey. And the journey is your reward. Dr. Jordan Peterson said something very similar when he talked about how there are opposite extremes. There can be the ideal of bliss and almost euphoria, or just goodness, and then the other ideal, or the contrary form of the ideal, the absolute negative side, which is not an ideal to be precise, but the contrary form is going to be misery and chaos and destruction, and you have these two opposite extremes, and life is about a journey between these two extremes, and it's not about where you end up, it's about the journey itself. So I think that understanding all of these components will make you stronger in a certain way, and once you begin to value both the journey itself and where you end up, let's go beyond, it doesn't matter where you end up, let's go beyond Jordan Peterson. Let's say the result matters and the journey matters, then everything you have is a good experience. Everything you have is a valuable experience. Everything you have is allowing you to create. And when I would think back, why was I making all of those discombobulated ramblings on YouTube? And the honest answer was because I was just adding a component to my day. I was just scheduling in my mind, and I would spend the entire day thinking about what I was going to talk about on YouTube. But in reality, I was creating a product, the little podcast recording, that wasn't very good, that was very messy, and I wasn't paying attention to the audio quality. I wasn't paying attention to structuring my thinking in any particular way. I was just talking in circles, and I wasn't trying to help people fall asleep. I was talking in an extremely loud voice, and I think that that definitely shows a lack of mental fortitude, but it also shows lack of discipline and not caring about the result. But human beings love to create. That's the reason. Human beings love to make new content. And I found this quotation once from Julius Caesar when he said that creation is the essence of being. And that has also stayed with me so much. Okay, the full quotation is, "It is better to create than to learn because creation is the essence of being." And I don't see how anyone could create anything without strength. Strength is so valuable to the forms of creation because you're using the power of the mind, the ability to be aware of our own conscious experience of existence, and the neurons in your brain are connecting and allowing you to have this idea that you want to put into some type of materialization, even if it's just telling a story and making somebody else laugh, or maybe it's a drama and you're making somebody cry. Now imagine someone who had the ability to do that, had the ability to make other people feel things with their words. That goes back to persuasion tactics, that goes back to mental fortitude, that goes back to using ideas. About 3 years ago, I heard a very interesting podcast on, I don't even remember which channel to be honest, but it was done with the group Marvelous Work and a Wonder, whom I talk about a lot online. And they talked about ideas and how people used ideas over the course of the centuries, because it goes back to that concept of, in the Stone Age perhaps, the person who can pick up the biggest rock is going to be the dominant force. I tell you what to do because I'm bigger than you and I can beat you up. And many people still live that way to this day. But what happens is people then would have to start using their brains to control the other person. And sometimes this can be done in a religious way when they say that if you do that, if you beat me up, that's bad, and then you will go to hell. Or they can say that if you do that and you beat me up, that's illegal, and you're going to go to jail. And you might be thinking, well, that's just fear. That's just the fear of punishment. And the first response would be, no matter what, it seems to be working because there are rules in place and you're giving somebody a reason to follow the rules, and they are genuinely understanding why they should not attack you, why they shouldn't beat you up. But that comes from an idea in the brain. And then once you use the ability to persuade someone without physical force, you've explored a new form of strength. And that was a rather interesting show because their thesis to the podcast was that politics and religion are one and the same, because they're both about using ideas to control people, and even referring to something like God as an idea. And then the other side of it is that politics uses things such as power to control people, power that is almost specifically coming from a human form, with the exception of political structures that are like theocracies. Most of the time, the ideas in the political world are human created, and they admit that they are human created. I don't completely accept the idea that, I shouldn't use that word, I don't completely accept the statement that politics and religion are one and the same, because I believe that religion is exclusively relevant to spirituality of some form, and maybe there's one or two exceptions that prove the rule, but I think that it doesn't only have to be about arguing a case, that some people are acknowledging this spiritual type of existence, and they want to look at how how it is affecting modern culture, how it affects human societies, and that's when it becomes religion. And I don't mean to talk too much about spirituality during a discussion on strength, but I will just share one thing with you. I used to say that spirituality was one's personal connection to God, the divine, or any form of a spiritual property, and that religion is when spirituality would affect culture, because I think that's one of the most honest definitions of it. And I would always try to do this when I was growing up. I would look at all of these different ideas that people had, and I would try to reconcile them, whether it would be like, what's the purpose of life, or what's the common thing that all life forms seem to be doing. And with that one, I used to say it was to contribute to the continuation of one's own species. But people would always challenge me on that because they're like, well, not everybody does that. And I was like, well, then they're going against the purpose. And some people have said that exact same thing to me over the years, that they believe that the true purpose of life is procreation, not only like reproducing and having babies, but helping people and sharing things. And I think that one way that you can incorporate this type of purpose of life and strength together would be exactly like the art of archery that I was talking about, the book Zen and the Art of Archery, when the guy, just on YouTube, given his own take on the subject, saying that it's about the result and it's about the process. And it's just that the journey is your reward, and focusing on the result, focusing on the journey, going beyond, it doesn't matter where you end up. Let's say that it does matter where you end up. Okay, that is your ability to put your life together. That allows you to succeed every single day. That allows you to be in the moment of greatness every single day. And from that point onward, you are accomplishing something. If your goal is to make $1 million and you're working hard every day, and then you're just going to be like you're one step closer to $1 million. If you have a setback, well, then the $1 million is going to feel so much better once you get it. And then if you have something that makes it seem like it's almost utterly impossible to obtain the goal, ignore it. Because I think that that was the true focus of the motivation for strength. And that is that no matter what happens, do not give up. Decide on what your goal is and tell yourself the result that you want to experience and go after it and pursue it and don't back down. And I've talked about this concept a little bit on these podcasts for sleep about self-control, when there was the story of the person who goes on a diet but then wants to eat the chocolate muffin. And I read this on a personal training website, like a fitness website rather than personal training. And it said, if you want to get in shape and you want your body to look a certain way, like maybe one of those beach models or something, or you want to be a bodybuilder, or you just want to get really healthy, or whatever you want your body to look like, ask yourself, how much do you actually want this? Because every time you think, oh, you know what, I'm just going to have that extra chocolate muffin, then you are one step back. And I think that that is so honest, because that goes back to the self-control and the mental toughness and fortitude, all of those points, because that is showing the moments of weakness. And the other thing that I like to combine with that story is the element of something I heard from John Sonmez when he said one day he decided to cheat on his diet and thought, the old him would have just said, you know what, I'm going to cheat all night. I'm going to eat whatever I want and start again tomorrow. That is not appreciating the process. That is not going after the result or the process. It's a step back from the result, and it's not valuing the process to get to the result. And it's just saying that, oh, well, I'll try again tomorrow. And then he's always going to be doing it. So he just said, no, I cannot do this. I cannot cheat on my diet because I'm just going to have another moment of weakness 2 or 3 days later, and it's going to be the same process all over again, the same cycle of destructive behaviors all over again. And these types of elements are very much present in our daily life, and they make us question why we do the things that we do. But I think that the motivation is supposed to be that you're going to tell yourself, I'm refusing this chocolate muffin because I'm on a diet and I want to get in shape. Therefore, I am earning the result. That's like maybe a prize or reward at the end. I'm earning this prize or this reward. And that is going to be so great when I actually have the opportunity to get there. But I am doing something that I believe is good for myself. And I will have to do an entire podcast for sleep all about believing. Because sometimes you have to. You have to say that I believe that this is good for me. When other people might be telling you not to do that, well, it's your decision, it's your life. You're the one who should be in control of your life. And other people are going to try and manipulate you because they have nothing better to do. They're the ones who will never succeed because what they wanted was garbage. They're the ones who are never going to accomplish anything because they don't want anything. They just want to be lazy. They just want other people to do things for them, and sometimes they might even ride on somebody else's coattails and act like they're part of the group, and then this just goes back to something I heard from Paul Watkins when he said, the slowest person in a group can be the most manipulative because they're making other people wait for them. The person who's always showing up 30 or 40 minutes late, the person who takes the longest to get ready, the person who's refusing to do anything. And there were so many people whom I have connected with in the past, whom I've called friends in the past, and they behaved like that. And even one of them I still hold in high regard, because I recognize that he had his own mental troubles at the time, and I empathize with him to a certain respect, and I have the ability to make judgments in a case-by-case way. But with the other people, they just simply didn't want to do anything. They would always want me to make the decisions about where we're going to eat or what we're going to do on the day off or when we spend time together, but they knew fully well that they didn't like anything that I ever decide, so then they just end up complaining about it and say that I made bad decisions. And I was thinking, well, what do you want to do? And they're like, oh, whatever, anything's fine. Then they end up complaining. They don't mean that whatever and anything is fine. And that is its own form of weakness. That is a manipulative tactic, but it's not a good one, because they're not valuing the process, they're not valuing the result. The only thing that they are valuing is their ability to put chaos into the system. The ability to break something. They're just the children who are trying to smash something because they have nothing else to do. And a lot of it stems from immaturity. And I tend to think, though, that immaturity is perhaps an overly used term, so I'll be very careful with that, because somebody once said, this was actually on a true crime show, that we are all children. We are all kids. And I think that is so true, because the same behaviors that I see in children, that I saw in children when I was in kindergarten and the first grade and the second grade, and especially the fourth grade, because when you go from the third grade to the fourth grade, kids get a lot meaner. I see those behaviors in adults. And the therapist turned YouTuber Daniel Mackler openly said that after the age of 4, you can usually tell what somebody's personality is going to be like into adulthood, and I absolutely believe that that is true. But in terms of personality, it's not only strong and weak. There are people who are going to be in the middle. There are going to be people who are not physically strong but mentally strong. There are going to be people who are strong at heart but maybe not always strong in the mind. And self-reliance versus mental toughness, I've talked about that before on these podcasts for sleep. But here's another thing. You can get stronger. You can make your own decisions. If you want to be physically strong, you can do it. And I used to listen to this one guy who talked a lot about Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz, the philosopher and politician and mathematician, and he did a bunch of things. But he talked about the Leibnizian tradition, which was that if the idea exists in the mind, then it can also exist in the external world. Meaning, like what some people want to say, if there is a will, there is a way. And I definitely think that that is mostly true. You might find some exceptions about something that you imagine that wouldn't be completely possible to create, or even if you could create it, it's going to be impractical sometimes, and it would almost be so extreme that it wouldn't be worth the entire endeavor, and there would be better uses of your time. And we might still be children in terms of our personalities and the way we act toward other people, but when we enter into adulthood, we have to make decisions like that. And we have to decide, what are we actually going to do? How are we going to do this? And there are consequences to our actions. So when it comes to getting stronger, you can say, if you're not in shape, I'm going to get in shape, and I'm going to get muscular. But one point, though, that always held me back in terms of physical strength was saying I'm going to go to the gym, and I would get the gym membership, and I would do it pretty well for 6 months and then stop. But I would always say, no, I'm never going to get a personal trainer because it's expensive. But then I began to think, well, what on earth is the money for? That's what I think about now. At my age, I'm 34, But what's the money? What am I doing with the money then if I don't want to spend it on something like that? Or like the people who want to get stronger in a different way, whether it's improving their mental state or their personal lives, and they look at these things like getting the premium package on a dating site that'll give you more features that can actually allow you to meet that partner you're trying to find. And always thinking, no, I don't want to pay for that, it's too expensive. But now I'm just like, what is the money for? Why would I just keep money in the bank just to never use it? And somebody told me this when I was 29. It was about a week before my 30th birthday, and he said, when you turn 30, you're going to be aware of your mortality. And I think about that all the time. Oh, I have many years left, God willing, but I don't have forever. When I was a kid, it seemed like I had forever, and I had this whole plan worked out until I was 30, but I didn't do it, of course. But now I think about that, and it doesn't even matter if I did. I'm 34. That plan was 4 years old anyway. So I also think that that can tie into strength. The go-getters, the doers, those who want to accomplish, those who don't simply want to sit on the sidelines, the people who are going to grab life by the horns, grab the bull by the horns, the people who aren't afraid. Those are forms of strength, the people who are passionate and follow their passions. But there's an interesting thing that I heard on the show Self-Employed that talked about following your passion. It said that sometimes you have to take the plunge. When you want to start a business, you just have to jump, and you have to go for it. However, you should do that when you are on stable ground. It's so much easier to jump when you have a stable base beneath you. And I think that is so amazingly true, as opposed to just floating from one thing to another in some type of mushy existence, jumping on stable ground. And those are the tactics that we can learn in adulthood. And those are the tactics that we can learn through appreciating the process and appreciating the result, and thinking that I'm jumping into a new situation, but I have a stable base beneath me. I have safety nets, and I have plans, and I have a backup plan, and I have a strategy. And that is how you can tell yourself these things that you're doing right. Tell yourself these things that you believe that are good. Tell yourself that you have an ability to succeed. You have the method to succeed. You can appreciate the process and the result. If that isn't strong, I don't know what is. Being strong has nothing to do with fist fights. Who cares about that? Some people are just born differently. Some people are 3 times your size, and they have the ability to have quicker reflexes, and they might know something about martial arts. Who cares? We don't live in that world anymore. Those are the days of the past. We live in a world of ideas and consciousness and plans for success. You are who you are. Being weird is not a crime. Think of your wacky, wonderful, weird idea for success and put it into action. Get your life together because you want to get your life together. Because each step toward that goal that you have is something that you can appreciate, and tell yourself that it is good, and tell yourself that you're doing the right thing. And when other people tell you that you're doing the wrong thing and they don't have a reason, take the step forward anyway and let them stay behind. You can do anything that it can be envisioned in the trenches of your mind, in your memories, in your ability to imagine, in anything that those little neurons in the brain allow you to do, because you have the ability to create. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you are asleep now. I'll see you in the morning and try again tomorrow night. Good night.